Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the introduction and some great presentations from the other speakers. Certainly a learning experience, and around what we do, we're learning actually fundamentally how you set up your business as an SME to be successful. You've got to do all the right things, the tax, the structure, the figures, and everything. You've got to start thinking big somehow. Make sure that you're actually scalable for when you're big, and everything goes in building the brand. We've certainly been trying to do that. We have been doing that with Rack Center. It's a key thing for us to build a Nigerian brand that is truly African, proudly Nigerian, with a global perspective. And what we do is everything we do has to be comparable to world standards. So I'm not quite at the place where we get the tattoos on my team's arms or whatever, but we certainly try to have people who are engaged in what we're about, engaged in the industry we're in, and 3, make sure that the fact that we're Nigerian means actually that we can be truly world class, and what we aim for are the kind of recognition, delivery, actually, that is recognized world class. Okay, good. So here's the start of the presentation I'm going through. And in that context, I actually go through, global Africa context, because there's an opportunity as an SME. You've got a huge market here. However, if you look at the GDP, Nigerian GDP, actually people talk about we must diversify. We've got a good old-fashioned balance of payments problem, and I'll explain it. Oil is about, I won't be precise, I'll just give you broad numbers, about 10% of GDP. I was speaking to a group of investors in London not long ago, and they went, when I said that. In Nigeria, oil is around about 10% of GDP. Telecoms and IT and media is actually higher than oil as a contribution to GDP. Okay? If you look at services, if you look at agriculture is significantly more. So we're quite a diversified economy. But one thing I notice about our psyche is that we don't always have an export drive. We do not have a drive to consume what we make in Nigeria. Nigeria actually, with the companies like Bulos and so on that make great tissues, but people still want to go to the shop to buy something that's substandard, that's imported. And the assertion we make is that in what we do as Rack Center is actually compares with the best in the world, and I'll go through some of that. I think the global context will give us some perspective. I'll talk about Nigerian context, which I've pretty much covered in my intro. Then I'll talk about Rack Center. We're a technology company. We provide hosting services. And if you look at the data growth in the world, it's growing at this kind of rate. Okay? So as a business, how do you deal with that? We talk about big data. Your customers are going to expect you to be able to not just deal with your big data, but manage it. But the price points, the entry point as an SME has to be right. Looking at Africa within the global context, 7.5 billion people. Africa has 1.2 billion, okay? GDP of the world is 75 trillion. Africa is 2.55 trillion. Internet users, you see, when you look at Africa in ratios, it's a bad thing. It looks poor. When you look at Africa in absolute numbers, then it's really quite interesting. I'll show you some examples. You know what this means, though? If you look at West Africa, we have 360 million people. Nigeria is it's either 50% of West Africa or 60%. There's nothing less than 50%, depending on what you look at. GDP, population, and so on and so forth. So we're in a great place, okay? Facebook users, 29.2 million. So we're bound to get interest from people like Facebook and Google and so on in Africa. If you look at internet penetration, Nigeria over there is the highest in Africa. It's not showing, it's about 96 million people. We were ahead of Russia. Over the last 2 years of recession, we actually fell behind Russia. But it might be interesting to you to note that Nigeria is number 8 in world top 20 internet countries, okay? 97.2 million. Russia is the biggest in Europe, okay? We were ahead of Russia not too long ago, but we've fallen behind for a variety of economic reasons, and you won't be surprised if we grow beyond Russia again. So that's your business base, okay? But you might think, oh, my business base is here. why don't I just meet local demand? If you go to the German embassy, the French embassy, the British embassy, Indian, they're all talking to our people about buying products from those countries. You need to also start to look out to see what's out there, because it's better for you to earn your dollars than for you to go out and find it from the malam. It's a simple equation. And when you earn your dollars, rather than looking for the malam, you can figure out how to spend it. So you think about the products you develop at world class. But you see, once you do that, it actually gives you the option of then coming back to satisfy local demand. And some of the things we're looking at Rack Center, and I'll show you in a minute. If you look at most populated countries, we're out, at the top there, we're 2.5% of global population. But one of the things that you find with Africa is we're actually around about 6% of the world population. Okay, no, 16%, sorry, world population, but just 3% of GDP. It's a huge gap. So we're going to have to make that GDP gap narrow somehow, and doing some of the things we do locally from a creativity point of view. We know that broadband, impact of broadband growth, if you have 10% growth in broadband, it has about 1.4% to your GDP. But if you look at comparisons even in Africa, I mean, our generation of electricity is something like 1/10 of what is generated even in South Africa. So there's some of these things that from an infrastructure point of view we want to fix. From a technology point of view, I can tell you about Rack Center. We've been in business for about 3.5 years. Some people say, oh, I can't believe in just 3.5 years. The importance of the brand building that we do. We really focus on the brand. We've been we're the first Tier 3 design certified, pretty close to being the first facility certified in sub-Saharan Africa. And we've got everything that you would expect from a quality hosting company. And our vision is actually to be the infrastructure company of Africa in delivering co-location and cloud services. Do you know our goal actually is to be the Rack Space, Rack Center of Africa, the Equinix rather of Africa. And it's not just a statement, it's actually driving a lot of what we do. So our cloud services, the quality of our services, the international accolades we have drive towards that. We're the most connected Tier 3 certified data center in West Africa. That means that if there's any African company that wants to be hosted in the place that allows it to connect all its countries together, it's the place to be. We've been building out over the last few years. I mean, currently we have about 255 racks capacity. By the end of Q4, our expectation is to have built a top floor there that takes us to 530 racks. And our goal is to hit 3,000 racks and around about 8.5 megawatts of cooling IT capacity. People say, what do you do for power? We're actually like a power company. We optimize what we do for power. We don't have utility yet. We're bringing in dedicated utility. But we're in Africa, so we'll organize ourselves to deliver what works well in Africa. So through diesel, we generate what is accredited by even world-class independent companies as world-class. We'll diversify, we'll bring in some gas later on as we grow. So we have quite a growth trajectory there. When I say that, it's quite a lot of small businesses and MSMEs actually use cloud services from outside of Africa. We've got a significant amount of data that's hosted outside of Africa. So what that means for you is that you're actually spending or calling your uncle or some friend or trying to figure out how to find dollars to pay your bills, yeah? And that actually constrains your growth. You've got some system over there somewhere. With all of that latency, the performance is reduced and so on. In delivering what is comparable to the best in Africa, it gives any SME the access to consuming IT services that's hosted locally. It's what we call cloud on ground. The reason we call it cloud on ground, if you say man on ground, the man is there, it's on ground. It's a sub-brand to Rack Center. So your cloud is on ground, it's here. If it's here, It's located in an environment that hosts the local internet exchange. So your customers' experience of your IT services are significantly better than if they are hosted elsewhere. Or even if it's your own services actually that you're consuming for running your businesses, your own experience of that is significantly better. And we now moved forward to be hosting the ECOWAS Internet Exchange. So what that means is every single country in the West Africa region is connected to Rack Center Exchange, which means you have instantaneous experience as you use the IT systems. What does that mean for you? We talked about branding and the importance of branding. You set a goal. There's nothing wrong as a small business if you get the right fundamentals in place and you're actually determined to do it, to set what is a seemingly impossible view of the future. What that does, it seems to some people impossible. At least it clarifies what this impossibility is. You set out your stall of how you're going to achieve it, and it will motivate you and every single one of your employees to achieve that goal. And at most of the time, if you want to put a man on the moon next year, you've got to make your impossibilities kind of in context, okay? But there's nothing wrong with you saying, first stop Nigeria, next stop West Africa, I'm going to be looking out and I'm going to make sure I'm as good as anything, anywhere. And that's one of the kind of things that we push. Well, the other aspect is if your IT is down, your business is down. I understand why people would have felt I'll go abroad to use Amazon Web Services or so on and so forth, because there wasn't a rack center in Nigeria 3 years ago. But right now, you now have those services that are available that can be consumed locally. And you can jolly well, expect service and quality of service and the technology to be as good as anywhere in the world. Because it's Nigerian doesn't mean that we should compromise. I was at a conference this week, and there was a term that was used that was quite interesting, Afri-skepticism. Afri-skepticism. If it's African, it's not just for us here in Nigeria. It's because it's African, therefore there should be a problem with it. I think we can just have a damn attitude to say, no, we'll make sure what we do is as good as anywhere else in the world and prove it. And one way to prove it, and one of the reasons we go for the certifications we go for, like being, the Uptime Institute is the recognized global body for the quality of data centers. And you won't find many on the map that are certified by this body. So basically, it says to anywhere in the world that is looking at it, I wouldn't have thought Nigeria had this capability. Now they see it on the global map, they think, oh, that's interesting. This is actually better than quite a lot of locations in Europe, even in the US or elsewhere in Asia. That gives the confidence and the validation I can go and use that service. That takes out that Afri-skepticism out of it. So we shouldn't just stand up and say, it's unfair, Afri-skepticism. No, you jolly well just make sure what you've got to do is as good as anywhere else. And you see, as you run your business, there's a dependency across all of these things, okay? And this is what we say to businesses, including big businesses, that if your IT is down, the data center is down, then, everything else doesn't work. Your customer service sucks, you cannot deliver on your business. And what we deliver is do all of that on behalf of companies so that they can focus on their business. We will focus on how the environment they run their IT in and provide the right operational environment. When I talk about tier 3, that's what it means. It's a validated level of performance, minimum downtime 8 minutes per month, compared to the other tiers, tier 2 and tier 1, and you can see it's a big difference in downtime there. Actually, even though the design is 8 minutes per month, we've been running for about 3.5 years now, and we haven't had 1 second of downtime. And that's something we can validate to our customers. Thank you. Also, being carrier neutral, what that means is that you're not linked to a carrier. If you're truly carrier neutral, all of your ISPs, all of your telcos, they're all connected directly. What that also means is that we're connected to every single one of those undersea cables. So do you know that on the South Atlantic coast of Africa, every single country is directly connected to a facility we have here in Nigeria through fiber? That means we actually can deliver our services to export to any of those countries, and also actually, interestingly enough, to other countries in Europe and the US. If you probably can't see it on the African map there, but if we hook up into some of the countries that we can link to, we can also get directly to Brazil. So we can deliver services directly to South America as well. So our view is a global view, proudly Nigerian, and creating a very strong African brand. So what it means, actually, we know that we're the most connected Tier 3 facility in West Africa. It's known. We're still validating the most connected in Africa, but you probably find maybe there's one most connected in Africa, but certainly it's the most connected in West Africa. And there's a whole range of awards here that we have. I'm setting this also as an example to SMEs that you know, there isn't a reason why you cannot set a broad goal. Put the right things in place, like the right ERP systems, doing the right things, paying the right tax. We're a learning organization. Actually, being here from listening to the other presentations have been a great learning experience for me. I've taken personal value from that. But there's nothing wrong with also setting a goal that you'll be recognized globally for the quality of what you deliver. You see, a lot of German companies are like that. They run, the SMEs are about 40 to 60% of the economy, even in Germany. However, they're tuned, it's like the program from school, they're tuned into just operating and looking outward, always looking outward in terms of the quality. It's a way of life, it's the expectation of quality. So what I can tell you is, if anybody, anytime, in building your company says, "Oh God, make you just manage it," please, just, you know, no, the term shouldn't be in your vocabulary, "we'll manage it." It's brand eroding, it kills your business. And then one thing we don't do in Rack Center is to manage it. No, actually, we take a pride of just standing up and say, no, we'll stand up for the highest quality, whether it's in Nigeria or not. And people who work for us understand that. Very, very much. If you look at the technologies we have there, I talked about a bit technical here, this I guess, but a few pictures won't hurt. Those are the Meet Me racks. We call them that. That's where all these telcos and ISPs and so on that we talk about coming to Rack Center. They're there and they can be directly connected to any of the businesses hosted there. We have quite sophisticated cold environment. IT systems need cooling. So you have a cold side that allows your systems to get the cool air, and a hot zone where all that air goes back around again, and you have quite a structured environment in there. Sometimes people coming and say, "I can't believe I'm in Africa," and that's perfectly fine. Or speak and engage with Rack Center employees, and I think that's interesting. We actually in Africa only have one expat working in Rack Center. Everybody is Nigerian. And we have people who are coming from Europe to say, you know, "Thank you, this is Nigerian." And we have very sophisticated cooling technology. Even in Africa, where the weather is quite hot, quite harsh, quite humid where we are, we still manage to achieve about 1.5, which is called this power usage efficiency. It's the most efficient actually that we've seen in Africa. Being here doesn't also mean that we shouldn't focus on efficiency and sustainability. It's actually, from an economic point of view, makes sense, because it means that we're spending less burning diesel and the power we create, for instance. And we'll be expanding our capability from diesel power, as I show there, to dedicated utility and gas. But we've been expanding our products and services. We've got Cloud on Ground, which is cloud services, to provide those services here. We do the carrier aggregation because we've got all of the carriers there. It helps people understand that they can be highly connected, and we can help them understand who provides the best ISP service in certain circumstances and so on. Professional services and managed services. It's actually because a lot of our customers have been asking us about providing these services. So what is Cloud on Ground? It really is a marketplace where a whole range of cloud services can be delivered. If it's your web hosting, I would suggest if you go to www.rack-center.com and try it out. Actually, under that is .ng in a way, because we have .ng domain. If you're .ng, you resolve your internet requests through the Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria. You don't go off to Netherlands or the US or California, you do it locally. If you go to that site, the response is instantaneous. CENTRE. Yes. Interestingly, CENTER is an American term. CNTRE is a world, it's United Nations Standard International English. So that's why we've used that term. So you have a comprehensive marketplace of all the cloud services required, including co-location and so on. What it means is that we can stratify the services. Big corporates can have X number of racks, and all their big systems. Smaller ones can have the single racks and some sub-racks. And a range of businesses, including SMEs, actually can also have cloud services that are delivered to what you want. Your website hosting, your infrastructure as a service, you can purchase all of those capabilities here. What we're doing actually is we've got some anchor capabilities and we're building those out over time to include what you would like, what you would want in a range of ERP services, in a range of other cloud-based services as well. So in summary, we are the first tier 3 in West Africa for design. Also now very close to getting the construct certification done. We've had the people in from the US and the UK, and my God, do they take you apart, but that's been a successful process to date. We're truly carrier neutral, the most connected, certainly in West Africa. Now, this is around Nigeria, just very, very quickly, when I talk about the prime geophysical location. Do you know Nigeria is only slightly right of the Greenwich Meridian, yeah? And we're about 6 to 9 degrees north of the equator. It's like God put us in that ideal position globally. If we deliver outsourced services, contact center services, as people speak very good English, we're in the middle of the world, halfway between the US and Asia, in the same time zone as Europe. We really are blessed with a geophysical location. What it means also for us in using this geophysical location is that because we're halfway from South Africa to Europe, so anything that's hosted with us is actually half the latency, or half the latency for anywhere in Africa, yeah? And I'm just putting in context because of the businesses we run here as well as SMEs can take advantage of that. And I speak to some of the contact center businesses and so on, and say, well, we've got to be able to be bold and deliver the services from a perfect geophysical location, given the benefits we have of how we speak English and the levels of education we have. And the absolute numbers, 97 million people accessing the internet. If you look at the ratios, you might say it's 50%, but 97 million people is a lot of people. So there is a lot of potential we have, even with our geophysical location. We're very scalable to grow to being one of the largest in Africa. We're one of the largest deployed capability in West Africa right now. It's highly efficient and a modular build, and really it's the heart of connectivity and cloud services delivered from here in Africa. Okay, thank you very much, and appreciate the time you've taken to listen to me. Cheers.